It's often very helpful to use a comparative bar graph to show the association between two variables. I'm going to show you one example in the text and actually two examples, but we're going to draw only one of them. So in the text there was a problem on, let's see, page 17 about men's and women's opinions about how likely they are to have future wealth. And they show our two variables then are male and female, and so gender, and the other is response to the question. And you can see that there are different percentages of women and men that have these different choices. So one thing to do is making a bar graph. Now, one thing you'll notice is we're looking at the percents rather than the counts, not how many, because we have two different totals of males and females. So we're not going to look at how many chose each response, but what percent chose each response, because that is the way you compare groups of unlike sizes. And we see here that we have a key where all the blue bars represent the female choices and all the red bars represent the male choices for each of these. And we see what percentage of male and females responded in these different categories. And when you see that, then you can see that it was slightly more likely for males to think that they had a good chance or almost a certain chance of future wealth. It was slightly more likely for the females to think they only had some chance or almost none to have future wealth, especially the some chance. Now, another way we could display that same data is in what's called a segmented bar chart, where the bars go with the explanatory variable. So here the explanatory variable is female and male. Like the female, whether it was female or male, explains the differences between their choices. And then each section of the bar represents the percent of the data in each choice, and then here's the scale with the choices. So we're going to use a segmented bar graph. Something I want to point out here is for the females, for example, we went 4.1 for the almost no chance and 18% for some chance. So that means when I go on the scale here, notice on the segmented bar graph, this blue would end at 4%. This is 18%, so when you take the 18% and add it to the 4%, then the next mark here is about 22%. Then you would add whatever percent was in the next category to bring us up to the mark. So this tells us that about 50% or less thought there was either a 50-50 chance or less of future wealth. Okay, so those are some things you can look at with a segmented bar graph. So let's go back to our Titanic data and make a segmented bar graph. This will be a little easier because we only have two choices, so the bars are just going to be split into two. But with three choices, it's a little bit more complicated, but not bad. So this bar graph is the likelihood, it's supposed to be an I, not an E, the likelihood of surviving the Titanic by class, or based on class. Okay, so we're going to have here our bars is the explanatory variable, so we're going to have first class, second class, third class, and staff. Now, something I want you to notice about the bar graph is that this is always done in terms of percent, and the bars are always all 100% long, because this has to represent the totality of the values of the percents that make all the different choices. So we're going to have I'm going to do mine sideways rather than up and down because that just fits on the paper better for me, and that doesn't matter which way you do it. Oh, that's a terrible line. Let's kind of try to make it straight up and down. There we go. That's a little better. So I'm going to make my scale then from up to 100%, but I'm going to go by 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%. So giving us, so just going to do a quick label of that, of our percentages. Okay, so this is percent. And now I'm going to make a bar for each one of these, and because these are all long, so here's my 100 here all the way out to 100. So a bar for first class, another bar for second class. And normally with the segmented bar graphs, we have space between the bars. Okay, so I'm going to make all the bars have space between them. Okay, so here's third class, and here is staff. Okay, so they all represent 100%. Now, we're going to divide them by lived and by died. So we've got our percentages up here. So I need to make a little key, or a legend, sometimes it's called. So I'm going to use hash marks to represent the percent who lived, and just leave it open for the percent who died. Okay, you can use two different colors, however you want to do it. You know, actually maybe I'll make dots or something because it'll be easier to see on here. So when I go to, for first class, you can see 62.5% live. So I'm going to go down to my 62.5 on my scale and make my mark about right here. So here's the percent who lived, and here's the percent who died. Now for second class, it's 41 about, so percent who lived, percent who died. Okay, for third class, about 25% lived. I probably should have done the hash marks for dots for lived, because dots don't look quite as nice when I do a lot of them. And then just slightly less, 24% for staff, and then here's the percent who lived. Okay, so this gives you a really good visual of that as for higher classes, or for, I'm sorry, the higher class, first class, you're going to have a higher survival rate. Lower class, the third class. When I say lower class, I mean lower in income, lower in wealth and prestige and that sort of thing. So this is how you make a segmented bar graph. If we had more than one category, then the second category would be added to the first, we'd make another bar, and so forth.